Hey guys, this is Ergo Josh and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to give you guys a special tip on how to draw faces correctly almost every single time. But before I do that, I want to show you guys a little bit of proof of how other artists and companies use the same kind of technique to get their characters looking not only attractive or cute, but to keep them consistent every single time they're drawn. For example, with this portrait that I drew, if I go back into the time-lapse replay, you can see I start off with a basic shape right about here, and then at the end, I finish it up. So who am I talking about? Well, one company in particular is Disney. So with Disney, I wanted to look at Elsa from Frozen. You can tell that the character is very iconic. You know, everyone is visually attracted to almost every single one of Disney's characters. I mean, who doesn't? That's why they're so popular. But something that I've noticed is that the way they structured their anatomy in their face in particular is very pleasing to the eye. And I'm just going to do a quick trace over to show you guys exactly what I mean. So let me reduce the opacity of these two. So I'm just going to do a quick trace over of their facial anatomy and focus on the shapes. So you can see here that it's very different from, you know, a normal human anatomy. Everything's kind of squashed down. It's very similar to like a baby's facial structure. Getting into it here, and then just going to do a basic outline for the eye. Just wanted this to be very quick. Basic diagram for the nose, and then for the mouth. And we'll go into the other one. Now some of you may be thinking like, oh, I can, like, you may be impressed by how I'm tracing their faces, but this is just because I've studied a lot of faces and I know quite a bit of face shapes already. So don't get discouraged, because after you watch this video, you'll have the tools that you need to be able to kind of identify these shapes, not only with other artistic content that you like, but in everyday pictures and people that you see in your walking life. Okay. So I'm going to get the rest of this nose down. I think I'm going to add a little bit of a line for the lower lip. I just want to keep this very diagrammatic. And then I think we're good. So as you can see, I've drawn the basic outline. And I don't know, but if you're like me, I can still tell, like with these extremely few basic lines, I can still tell that these are really cute, attractive girls, and I don't need any details to know that. I can just tell. In this one more in particular because it's at an angle, but here as well, you can just tell. Like, I know a lot of you, if you could draw something like this, you would be really happy. And you can. I mean, this is basically an egg shape. You've got a triangle here for the nose. You've got an arc here for the lips with two smaller arcs, a line, and then another almond shape, right? And the thing is, if you can draw these shapes, then you can fill in the rest of the details. And what most people do is they'll get distracted and start with the eye and start with the other eye, not be able to draw the other eye, or they'll start with the nose, and it just doesn't work. Now, why are these two shapes in particular very interesting? Why do we like them? Well, I think it's because Disney knows the power of cats. So, cats. Basically, the anatomy of Elsa and many other characters that Disney has created, they share similar anatomy cues that cats have. And you know, we all like cats, right? Some would argue that the internet is for cats, cat videos in particular. The way their face is structured is basically, if you take a circle and use that to represent a face, and you cut it in half, a cat's face is basically the eyes above the circle, above the halfway line, and then the nose and the mouth below it, right? And that's basically it. But if you look at it in profile, like I'm about to show you here. I'm not exactly sure if that's the skull shape for a cat's head. I feel like it isn't, but I think it'll still get the message across. So as you can see here, just getting the basic shape of the cat in, it's pretty much, you know, it's very simple. But in profile, there's also this thing where the nose and the mouth are in this little chunk that extends from the face, right? And so the face is elongated because, you know, it's a cat, it's not a human being. But basically, you got half the face all dedicated to the eye and the forehead, and then the rest dedicated to the mouth and the nose. If we look at it in head-on view, it's pretty much the same thing. Working here. And then if I try to estimate, like, if I were to try to represent a cat's smushy face into like one shape, it's really tricky to do. It's more evident, the proportions that I'm talking about. So this really does look like half, and you can see like everything is dedicated to the eyes above the halfway line, and then below you've got this little chunk that's just the nose and the mouth. So if we go back to the Elsa drawings, you can see it's basically the same thing. Let me draw on the right layer. You can see it's basically the same thing. It's like you draw a halfway line, you've got the nose and the mouth and this little protruding little chunk here, and then the eyes. And so we're used to that. We think that kind of look is really cute and attractive. See it here. She's got this really elongated little chunk of a face. I keep using that word. Just for her nose, her mouth, and her chin, and then the rest of her face upwards is for her eyes and her forehead. And let me turn them back on. It makes a very cute, very youthful, attractive expression. And I think, I don't know who exactly designed all of Disney's characters, but I think they really took cues from cats. Because, you know, we all know cats, we all love cats, and it really helps us identify with these characters, and it conveys the innocence and the attractiveness of just, you know, a very cute person. And it gets people coming to the shows, it gets people buying the toys, you know, it works. So am I saying that you need to copy the shape to get all of your drawings to look good? No. But what I'm saying is that instead of focusing on trying to draw an eye and guess where the nose is, focus on learning how to see shapes, how to look at an oval and bend it properly, how to bisect it. You know, if I go back on here, you can see this is a kind of a egg shape that's turned in 3D space, and you can cut it in half. You can draw a halfway line, you know, you can draw the lines for the planes of the face, and you're getting into a lot of like facial anatomy details here, but still, if you focus on like these basic shapes, and even if I were to erase the eyes, you know, and focus on the kind of diagrams that I just drew. Let me hide Elsa. Right, so if you focus mostly on just those anatomical shapes, I can tell that this is still going to be a successful drawing. So before you even draw any details, you should be drawing things like this. And then once you get used to it, and I'm sure some of you even now as you're watching this video, you can visualize where those eyes are going to be. You can visualize where that nose is going to be. And you would be really confident, and drawing the other eye wouldn't even be hard. You wouldn't even feel like you need to, you know, look at so much reference. You would just get a feel for it and guess like, okay, there's this like kind of soft continual rhythm here that flows into the nose. There's a mouth that kind of stays within this line, you know, and I'm drawing a face that's different from Elsa originally, but it still works because it's just something that makes sense because it follows the shape rhythm. And if you can learn to see this, then every single drawing you do is going to be successful, because you'll, instead of thinking, oh, this eye isn't right, oh, this mouth is in the wrong place, I need to shift it, you'll be thinking, oh, this character looks a little bit older than I wanted, let me make her look a little bit younger. Oh, this character looks a little bit too masculine, let me make it more feminine by doing this thing that I know makes characters look more feminine because of basic, you know, something you can read in a book. For example, like the jaws, they're much less pronounced, so I make it rounder to make the character look more feminine. And you start to really be creative, and you start to be developing things that people find interesting rather than just copies of things that we see in reality. And then that's where you really start to see your style begin to come out, and really amazing things begin to happen, and you start feeling like, you know, you're making art and it's fun. And yeah, that's what it's all about. So don't focus so much on the details, but focus more on the shapes and learning to see that, getting an eye for things. But the question you guys might be having now is, well, how do I do that, Josh? How do I learn to see these shapes? And I'll give you a little tip on how to do that. But before I give it to you, keep an open mind. This is kind of a taboo thing. I know a lot of people think that what I'm about to tell you is wrong, but it really isn't, as long as you do it and you're understanding that you're doing it to learn. Actually, scratch what I just said. I'm going to include that in another video. I got into it a little bit and I realized it was way too big of a topic to try to smush into this one. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit more in depth of how I did it in this portrait here. So if we go back into the time-lapse replay, you can see I started off with a circle, and I just do that to, you know, it's simple, it's easy, it gets you in the mood for drawing, and it, you know, having something on the paper is always just a really great way to start to add more things. Starting from a detail is very difficult, and you'll see usually only very experienced artists do that. But then, yeah, after I move past the circle, I add into this V shape and this kind of round shape for the cranium, and I've gotten very used to getting that gesture, getting that stroke right, and that's why you can see it's pretty much perfectly done, even though it's only like 1 or 2 lines. And then I go in and then I start shaping the jaw, and I know that I'm having this head that's looking down, so I draw the shape of this head. I'm cutting out where the plane of the head at the forehead stops, and recognizing that it's this M shape. Then I cut down and I focus on this V shape, and so immediately I know where the mouth is and where the nose is without having to struggle, because once I've got these basic shapes down, and I think you guys too, looking at this part right here, you can already get a feel for where everything is going to be. And the more experienced you are, the more details you can see before you actually draw. So as you can see, I continue to add more details. I draw these lines, you know, they kind of look like Spider-Man, but it helps give my mind a little bit more hints about where I should put these eyes. I'm not comparing the distance between any points yet. I'm just trying to build it up for myself, even though I am using reference to draw this. And so there I get the eyes done, and I shift them a tiny little bit, but if you notice throughout the rest of the drawing, I don't really change the position very much. And I just continue to add detail. As we move forward, you know, I'm now focusing on the hair, I'm thinking about the composition, and the face is already done, pretty much. I don't fiddle with the face, I don't struggle with it, and trust me guys, I've spent way too much time struggling with the faces before, but here it was done and it was quick because I focused on the shape and I allowed that to inform my decisions moving forward. And here I am, finishing up the final portrait. But I'm actually not finishing it up. I'm just adding a few more details before I convert it to something that's black and white, and then I will continue to work on it from there to make it a final portrait before my editing phase. But if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to subscribe. I make videos at least once a week, and I will definitely follow up with the promise I made earlier in the video to show you guys how to quickly learn how to see shapes. It's something that I have done very successfully, that has been very helpful to me and has completely transformed my artwork, in my opinion. So please stay tuned for that. It's just, I would have loved to include it in this video, but it's just, it would have gotten too long, and I feel like I really want people to understand it, and I feel like it would be best to just have a completely dedicated video for that topic. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.